Welcome, Soaring Sisters. Merry Christmas to all of you who celebrate Christmas, and happy holidays to anybody else. I think this time of year is a really great time here in Australia. It's sunny days, it's often very hot and very humid, but today it's overcast and quite cool. Not a great day for soaring, so I'm in my office making videos for you all. In this episode, we're going to bring you some news from our Soaring Sisters around the world, and we're going to speak about gliding instruction and some of the challenges that people experience learning to fly, and also what it takes to be a good gliding instructor. So, let's get on with this episode. As I said, it's a fabulous time of year here in Australia. This time, 1 year ago, I was eating ham and chutney on toast and celebrating Christmas with all of the fabulous pilots at the Women's World Gliding Championships in Lake Keepit. We were prepping for a January start. I think it was the 3rd of January, the opening ceremony, and we're all getting excited about that. It was a very difficult time here in Australia. We didn't know what was coming in terms of COVID-19 at that point in time, but we were living through some of the worst bushfires and the worst drought that you could ever imagine. And while it was a difficult time, it was great to have a whole bunch of like-minded women all interested in soaring, even if in very difficult circumstances. COVID-19 has been a challenge for everybody right here, right now in New South Wales. We have had a spike in cases, and we are pretty much sort of locked down in some suburbs in Sydney and being very cautious in others. Fortunately, it's not affecting my ability to move around and to go soaring. But what is affecting my ability to do that is that I'm moving house. And if I can just pan my camera around, you can see a whole bunch of storage boxes, and my bookshelf, which is usually full, is empty. And that's because on the 28th I will pack up this house into a truck and I will move to, guess where? To about 25 kilometers away, maybe 30 kilometers away from Lake Keepit Soaring Club. I'm going to be speaking in this episode about learning to fly and instructors and some of the experiences that students sometimes complain about as being, challenges for them when they're learning to fly. And I have this view in life that we need to think of these things as opportunities. And so when COVID-19 provided challenges for me, I sought to find ways to turn that into opportunity. Now, it was very difficult. As someone who comes from a marginalized community, I had a very hard time getting work. I work in a professional capacity in all kinds of organizational change, a bunch of other things. And in those professional kinds of skills are very, very useful, but I find that it's a difficult space for me to be taken seriously sometimes. And with COVID-19 shutting organisations down, you would think there would be a big demand for people with my skills, but in fact, I found it very hard to get a job, and I was out of work for 10 months, which really severely affected my ability to fly, let alone my ability to live, shall we say. And I shared some of that experience in a recent video called COVID Escape, so go and check that one out. But I did get a job, and I'm working for one of Australia's big four banks, and I'm working on an organisational change project, a really massive change in response to regulators. And one of the things that's happened out of COVID is that we're all working from home. And when I applied for the job and when I was interviewed, and since, my employer has said to me, you can work anywhere you like, from anywhere you like. So at that point in time, with the person who owns this home thinking about potentially selling it at some point, I thought to myself, I literally have one opportunity to make this happen. I'm on leave for 3 weeks, and while I was going to spend all of those 3 weeks flying, I decided that I would take this opportunity to relocate. And so I'm moving to the country town of Gunnedah, which some of you who were at the Women's World Gliding Championships will know quite well. And that puts me in really good reach of the Lake Keep It Soaring Club, where Peggy, my Pegasus, lives. So I'm expecting to be able to spend lots of weekends at Lake Keep It Soaring Club. Now, what that means for you as viewers of this channel is lots more flying content and less of me sitting in this living room. So I'm really looking forward to that, and I hope you are too. What I'm really excited about is how gliding has recognised recently that it has a connection to what we call STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And so it is that there's a growing interest from girls and women around the world in STEM careers, and therefore an interest in aviation careers. And it's great to see Liz Sparrow inspiring young girls in the STEMATS program in the UK, teaching them how to build a wing spar, apparently. So that was great news to see that come up in my Facebook feed recently. I know Liz is really passionate about getting girls and women involved in science and in aviation in particular. So great work, Liz, and great work those girls who were participating in the program and building their wing spars and testing them. Also from the UK, congratulations to Katie for your solo at the Banbury Gliding Club. Well done, and wishing you all the best for your future in gliding. So fabulous to see these young people, young girls and young women going solo in various places. So if you have some news from your club, it doesn't matter where it is in the world, of women and girls doing great things in gliding, send them to me, comment on this YouTube video, and we'll share the information on this channel. Now, one of the places that is on my bucket list for gliding is the Long Mynd, which I believe is at the Midland Gliding Club. So I was really excited to see that Holly is the newest and youngest instructor at the Midland Gliding Club. I don't know about you, but I totally intend to get myself over to the Long Mynd and take a bungee launch one day. That's been on my bucket list ever since I heard of the place. So hopefully I'll be over there sometime and be able to take a flight with Holly. Staying in the UK, it was great to see 2 women glider pilots featuring on Stellar TV on the net. Claudia Hill telling us about gliding and her involvement in gliding, and interestingly that she, like me, is scared of heights, which I think I'm going to talk about in another episode. There are so many glider pilots who are scared of heights, and I think that's what makes our sport really, really interesting. Also, Olsen speaking on the same channel. So congratulations to those ladies for getting on that channel and speaking about the sport that we all love and promoting it to a wider audience. Back here in Australia, it's almost time for Joey Glide. In New South Wales right at the moment, we're having a little bit of a COVID event on the northern beaches and some parts of Sydney. We've had a spike in cases, I think due to an international aircrew breaking the rules. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but that's what I hear is what happened. Apparently international air crews come in and stay and leave, and they're supposed to stay in like 24-hour isolation between their shifts or something like that. And this particular air crew didn't stay in isolation, so there you go. It's important that we stick to the rules. Anyway, the upshot of all of this is that Joey Glide is planned to go ahead, but they're leaving the decision till the very last minute, and they've actually contacted all of the pilots and all of the parents of the pilots to confirm that that will be okay. I think it's a great, way to do things now, is just to say, go back to the people and say, look, we've got your interests at heart, and sorry it's an inconvenience, but we really want this event to go ahead, and so here's what we're thinking about doing. That customer-centered or client-centered or person-centered kind of approach. Love it. Anyway, Joey Glide is planned to go ahead between the 7th and the 15th of January at Leeton in New South Wales, and I'm hoping I can pop down and pay a visit, because there are a bunch of young women who are participating, and I would really love to get there and have a chat to them. So a shout out to Harbins, Olivia, Marley, Emma and Lillian, and I hope you enjoy the event. Now I want to talk to you about learning to fly and the relationship to instructors. And there's also a little bit of advice in here for instructors. I've had a little bit of news recently about a number of students who have been training at a particular club, which I won't name, have expressed quite a bit of disappointment about their progress. And I think it's an interesting situation. I believe myself that there are some issues at this particular place, and that student pilots are perhaps not as progressing as quickly as they should. I don't know the reason why. I have my suspicions about what those reasons are, but I think I won't speculate, but I want to talk about instructing and also the student's perspective and how that relates to the instructors. Now, before I go into that, I want you all to know that I was a chief flying instructor. I was a level 2 instructor here in Australia. It's very difficult to get to level 3 where I was, because I was in a club that was disconnected from, the main centres of gliding, if you like, way up north in northern Australia. But I think one of the things that's really important as a CFI is that you have frequent communication with your instructor panel, that your instructor panel is conversing not only about, how we do instructing, but also about the progress of individual students, and importantly, how the instructors and the instructor panel as a group and as individuals can support each and every student. Now, when I was the CFI, the panel would get together and talk about individual students at a regular meeting and say, what's happening for this student and what do we need to do to help them progress and so forth. And recently I've heard stories, and I've been contacted by individual student pilots about their disappointment with respect to how they're progressing. Now, I don't know why they're contacting me. I'm not presently regularly instructing. I haven't instructed for some time, but perhaps it's because I work in the diversity and inclusion field, and I speak about things like cultural humility and humility more generally. that people maybe understand that I might have a perspective that is helpful to them. I don't know. I'm just guessing. But anyway, I want to speak about what's been expressed to me by some students, and also speak to how instructors can be, reaffirming that they're doing the right things in terms of helping students progress. So first of all, I want to say that in all of my, I don't even know how long it is now, 20 plus years of instructing, maybe it's getting close to 30, I can't remember now, that I have not found a student who I thought was never ever going to go solo. I did have students for whom I recognized that perhaps they were going to be always a slightly higher risk pilot and would need some management to help them with the decision making processes. But I have never met a pilot that I didn't think could ultimately become a good glider pilot. I will say though that I had some students who were very slow to progress of their own making, if you like. And I want to talk very briefly about that. It's not often the instructing that prevents a student from progressing, but it can be, and I know of instances in some clubs where that's actually happening. But typically it's choices that the student makes themselves and the mindset that the student adopts that holds them back. You've heard me mention many times that the way to learn to fly is to do it intensively. The faster you learn, the better you learn, the better it ultimately makes you as a pilot. If you're older, that's even more important. Young people will progress really rapidly through, and I've seen people go solo after, 15 or 16 flights. And I've seen pilots take 120 or 130 flights to go solo. Older people generally will take something like 70 or 80 flights, in my experience, at a winch club. I can't speak for progress at aerotow clubs very much. I can only do that from observation. But, what you should be doing as a student pilot, in my view, is trying to maximize your opportunities to learn, and that means taking as many flights on as many days, as close together as you can possibly do it. If finances are the problem, then you need to save your money first and then do a big block of training. And I've spoken about that many times. I've had a number of student pilots speak to me about some of their concerns, and they range from, simple misunderstandings to situations where instructors have actually been quite rude and not supportive. And I hope that's a rare occurrence. And I don't want to highlight that too much, but I think I'll talk first of all about comments like, I have too many instructors and they all tell me different things. And I can't learn because they keep changing the aircraft on me. So while those are valid concerns, what I would recommend that you do as a student is look at the opportunity in those situations. I'm going to talk about the aircraft first. As a post-solo student pilot, once you graduate into single-seaters in particular, you will need to progress through various aircraft at various levels of complexity. And one of the things that changes quite extensively, particularly if you go from wood and rag, as we say, aircraft, some of the older things like a K-13, for instance, to something like a DG-1000, your sight picture changes quite a bit. In terms of what it looks like at various speeds and so forth, what you're using to judge your attitude can look quite different. The aircraft can feel quite different. And so it's really important that you develop skills that allow you to adapt. So you need to think about the different aircraft as an opportunity to learn. And what I would encourage you to do is speak really openly to your instructors about what you're seeing, and ask them if what you're seeing and understanding and observing is valid. So, you might say, gee, I noticed in this particular aircraft that I don't need very much change in my attitude or change in my pitch for quite a considerable change in speed. Is that really what's going on? And the instructor will be able to confirm that, or instructors don't know everything. They might actually say, oh, maybe that is true, let me have a look. So, I guess it's important that you have a really open relationship with your instructors and you talk to them about what you're seeing and observing. And you might say to them, I have difficulty in judging my approach in this particular aircraft, or I have difficulty judging my attitude at flare or whatever, and can you give me some clues as to how I can fix that? Don't sort of get all tense about the fact that, oh no, I've changed aircraft again. I've been in the K13 for weeks and weeks and weeks, and now they're putting me in an ASK21 or a DG1000, or I'm not coping with the change. What I would suggest you do is you say, okay, they're changing me into another aircraft. I'm going to talk to my instructor about this, and I'm going to do it in a positive way. Look, I'm really keen to to get in a different aircraft and learn some about this particular aircraft. But I notice when I'm trying to fly this aircraft, I have this challenge. Can you talk to me about how I can overcome that? So that's, I guess, the first piece. Don't look at it as a negative. Try and see it as a positive, because I can tell you now, once you get more advanced in your flying and you're getting into more and more complex aircraft as you go, you need to be able to adapt in those ways. Okay, so now to the issue of instructors and having lots of different instructors and them all telling you different things. This again is part of what the panel should be doing and part of what the governing body should be doing. The governing body here in Australia has recognised that there are some challenges around ways of teaching and ways of instructing that have, kind of fallen apart a little bit, shall we say. There are instructor handbooks, and instructors should be generally using the same kinds of processes to teach students. But there are some departures that shouldn't exist, and all I can say is it's really up to the instructor panel and the CFI to say, this is how we do it here. And there has to be good justification for how it's done here, and it should adhere to the national ways of teaching, if you like, for your particular gliding governing body. So I think that's really important, and the higher level instructors and the RTOs and so on, those who are responsible for overseeing operations and training should really try and make sure that that's actually happening at these clubs, that there are standards. Generally speaking, I would say that most clubs do this well, and therefore the observation by some students that the instructors teach them in different ways, and it's challenging because they tell them different things, is mostly to do with different ways of teaching and different ways of understanding, different ways of knowing, which are all really important as well. As a student pilot, what you should be trying to do is assemble this body of knowledge and try to work out what each piece of it means. So if you get a particular piece of advice from an instructor and you find it challenging your understanding about something else that you've been told, don't be scared to raise it. Say, I'm getting a bit confused here because previous instructors have told me this and you're telling me that. Am I right in my assumption that that seems to be a contradiction? Or am I missing something here? You have to be a little bit critical about what you're being told. I'm not saying that you should ignore what you're being told. You should analyze what you're being told. So that's I guess the point of view from the student's point of view. When I'm thinking now about instructors though, I want to talk about some of the things that I've observed over a period of time or had shared with me by students. And it comes down to important instructor characteristics. And I think, again, it comes back to instructor panels to question what's happening in terms of their instructors and the way that they engage with students. And if people who are on the panel or within the club administration are observing instructors not really doing the correct things in terms of not demonstrating the correct personality traits, then that should be brought to the attention of the panel. There is a requirement for instructors to lead by example. If you're an instructor who's doing, constantly doing low circuits when you're flying personally or doing other risk-taking activities, that's going to carry over to the students. They're going to observe you as an instructor, even though you're not on an instructing flight, and they're going to go, well, there's somebody that I look up to because they're teaching me to fly, and look at what, and they're doing that, so that must be okay. So, and that kind of couples up with the next thing I want to talk about, which is self-discipline. Leading by good example requires good self-discipline, and self-discipline is an essential skill. The other one is integrity. An instructor has to demonstrate integrity. They can't have favorites. They have to, be open and honest. Now, one of the ones that I want to speak about most importantly is empathy. And you've heard me speak before about my involvement in helping corporations to understand the role of empathy and the role of humility. And these are traits that instructors should be demonstrating. Now, I'll give you an example, and I can't vouch for whether the story is true, although I have no reason to question it. I had a student come to me to seek advice about what they should do because they felt they weren't progressing. And they had felt that they had been bullied by a number of instructors, and they'd also felt that they'd been, they'd been belittled by the instructors. Things like, how long is it going to take you to learn this? I've showed you this so many times, or 130 flights, how long is it going to take you? These are not words that should come out of an instructor's mouth. What those words demonstrate is, I as an instructor have no clue how to teach you. And therefore that instructor should be going back to the panel and saying, I'm really interested in how we support this particular student to progress faster and trying to work out what's going on for that student. The empathy piece requires you as an instructor to put yourself inside that student's mind and say, what's going on for that student? And if you find yourself belittling or bullying a student, you need to stop instructing. And then, of course, there's knowledge and ability. Now, knowledge is actually top of a little pyramid. If you can imagine a pyramid, I like to think of it this way. Knowledge is about this much, and then there's skill. Now, skill is actually applied knowledge. Then there's experience, which is using that knowledge and those skills not over and over again in the same circumstances, but using them over and over again in different circumstances and with different inputs and different outputs, and that's experience. And then at the bottom of that pyramid is something called behavior, how you choose to act when you fly, when you teach, when you instruct. So these knowledge is really important, skill is really important, but your experience and your behavior are also really important. So as an instructor, it's important that you keep learning yourself. So now I want to speak about a number of qualities that are important beyond those that I've already spoken about. And I'm just going to use them as words, and I'm going to read them off a list here, so bear with me while I look away from the camera. But if you're an instructor, you need to ask yourself, are you knowledgeable? Are you knowledgeable all the time? You know, if a student comes to you with a certain question, can you answer it? Have you been challenged on your knowledge and found yourself lacking? Are you honest? Always? Sometimes? Never? Are you enthusiastic? Ask yourself again. Always, sometimes, never for each of these. Are you patient? If you're saying things to a student like, how long is it going to take you, that's not demonstrating patience. Do you show interest in the progress of your students and the way that they learn? Do you try to think about, how do I think this student is best learning? It seems when I do it this way, they understand better. Are you a motivator or a demotivator? There's some of the comments that I raised before, they're demotivational. As an instructor, you need to be a motivator. Do you develop people's potential? Do you help them to get better? Are you encouraging? Are you positive? Are you a good teacher? Are you constructive or destructive? Are you likable? I have to tell you, one of the reasons I think that people reach out to certain instructors over others has nothing to do with their knowledge or skill. It's their likability. Likability will get you a long way. Do you have a sense of humor? And not a kind of ridiculously joking sense of humor, but can you laugh at things? Are you respectful? Are you organized? Are you an organizer? Are you someone who builds people's confidence? Are you a good communicator? That's critical in instructing, as you already know, I'm sure. Communication's a two-way piece. I say something to you, what I need to know now is, did you understand it? So if you find yourself telling but not listening, then you're not communicating. Are you understanding? Are you polite? And are you sensitive to the needs of your students? These are questions that you as an instructor need to ask yourself. Now, I'm not a perfect instructor by any means, and I have to revisit that list from time to time to remind myself how to be a good instructor. I would strongly encourage others to do the same. Well, that was a pretty serious topic to talk about, but I think it's time that it was spoken about. The number of students that I've encountered very recently who've expressed some concern about the way that instructors have spoken to them, I think is something that needs to be spoken about more. Now, having said that, there are many, many, many fabulous instructors that I have come across, observed, worked with. So I don't want any of this to make it sound as though there's a bunch of really bad instructors out there. I think generally speaking, most instructors are doing a fabulous job, and remember, we're all volunteers. So as a student, also think about that. Anyway, this has been Soaring Sisters. Merry Christmas to everybody. Bye for now.